Hey there, and happy Saturday to you. Tim from Alpha Wolf Trading coming at you with this week's stocks to watch for trading and investing. So, I decided to make this week's video open for everyone. If you like what I do here, come over and consider joining Alpha Wolf Trading as a pro member for only $197 a year. I hope you find something good from this video, something you can take advantage of. But last week I didn't put out a week video for everyone, just for the pro members. And one of the things that we were really focused on were two specific sectors: building materials and home builders. And the reason for that was because they were one of the first; those were the two of the first sectors to really start to decline before we started seeing all that volatility in October. And we actually saw a pretty nice bounce in building materials specifically, and we did see a little bit of a bounce in home builders as well. And while it was nice to see a bounce for 3 or 4 days last week, or 3 days actually, it's not a big surprise that we pulled back a little bit right on Friday. And we're not out of the woods yet. There is nothing out there right now that's indicating to me that we've got an all clear for the bulls. And but we'll see. We'll see how this plays out. We've got an interesting week ahead. We've got election day, right? So that could wreak some havoc in the markets depending on what the outcome is there. Uh, um, we'll see how that plays out on Wednesday morning, and then we've got FOMC announcement on Thursday. I don't expect that there's going to be an interest rate hike, but there, will likely be some comments made, and we'll have to see how those are interpreted, right? So that could be something that impacts the markets. And then we got some really hot economic data last week, right? Big jobs number and some other real hot numbers last week. So we do have some PMI, ISM non-manufacturing. We got job openings that will be posted, and let's see what else we got. Consumer sentiment. So we've got quite a bit. Weekly jobless claims, all that stuff. So we do have some economic data and some things that could move the markets. We'll see how those play out. The other thing that we've got going on now, we are wrapping up earnings season. A lot of the big boys have already reported, but there are still a lot of names that are yet to report, and we've got quite a few of them. Square, just some of the names that Twilio, Turtle Beach, it happens to be one that I own. Nice little pop last week. Activision, I am keeping a very close eye on. Take-Two Interactive is another one. Look, if you don't want to play a specific company within the video game space, you could consider the ETF GAMR. I do have a position there, starter positions, long-term hold ETF. But it's been a pretty beaten up space. I actually would like to see Activision report some great numbers and pull back. I'd love to see it pull back to about 60 bucks actually. And that would be one I would want to take a position in my long-term hold portfolio. But we do have quite a few names that are reporting. Funko is another one that's kind of interesting. Trade Desk, Dropbox. Let's see, anybody else that really kind of stands out at me here. I think that's pretty much it. As far as the big expected anticipated earnings, but there are some other small names that I am keeping an eye on, like LPTH and APPS, and a few names that are in the stocks to watch list for this week that I'm going to be paying pretty close attention to as well. So I want to real quick show you the stocks from last week that I gave to the pro members in last week's pro member video. And here's their performance, the percentage performance for the week. Some pretty impressive moves here. NIHD, which is stock I currently own. Actually, looking for more out of NIHD, but very nice pop yesterday, this week. LOGC, recent IPO, NYMX, nice pop this week. Caesars, long-term hold that I have. Actually, we picked it up this week at $8. Turned out to be a pretty good buy at $8. So looking for more there in Caesars. They reported great numbers. CEO is going to step down, and there is rumor and speculation that they could be a takeout candidate. Tillman Fertitta supposedly already put in a $13 bid. The stock popped. They rejected that bid, and the stock dropped. But good numbers, and I'm looking for potential continuation there. Actually, I like a lot of the casino names. That has been a very beaten up sector, and maybe looking for a bit of a bounce there. So let's take a look at the overall sectors, and we could take a look at what I'm talking about here when I say we are not out of the woods by any stretch of the imagination, right? So we did have a nice little bounce, but if you were to draw a trend line, we kind of came up into the trend line and found a little bit of resistance, right? So IWM, now one thing about the IWM did bounce, and maybe we see the IWM, we figure out which way it's going to go, if it's going to continue to rally or if we're going to see a pullback. But you're going to start seeing some of these smaller cap names start reporting now that we got the big boys out of the way, and that could help us determine which way IWM is headed. If we're actually going to go retest these lows in 145 and take that out, or if we're going to wind up actually getting some follow through and maybe come back up and test that 200-day moving average. But IBB, a little bit of a bounce, but we're still in a downtrend, right? We're still guilty until proven innocent. IYT, nice little bounce there. Transportation, pulled back on Friday. Right now, as it looks, we're making what? A lower high, right? We're making lower highs, and that's concerning. So I'm still cautious of the markets, but if we do start to get a rip-your-face-off rally, and maybe it'll last into the end of the year, I still would keep very fresh in your memory what we just experienced in October, right? Especially if there's a shakeup in Washington, right? And we'll see how the G20 meeting goes with China. But I just saw, this weekend, a news release about North Korea threatening to restart their nuclear program. You got issues with Iran and the sanctions. So there's still stuff going on that could be concerning to the markets, and we need to be aware of that, right? We need to be aware of that. So, not saying we can't take advantage of the bounce and the trades, and a nice rip your face off rally. You can make a lot of money in a short period of time, but make sure you take profits into that rip your face off rally, right? Don't be a greedy pig and overstay your welcome and then watch it all be given back. That's something I just want you to really kind of focus on. So SMH, semiconductors, nice bounce last week. And, in my mind, one of the sectors that we could see some rotation into is the 5G space, communications equipment. It's been a very beaten up space. That's kind of a sector I'm really kind of fixating on a little bit. We're going to get some earnings this week out of some 5G players. I think that's a space you want to start paying attention to, because it looks like, at least for the supplier part of it, right? The suppliers within the 5G space, because you're starting to see some talk that some of these telecom companies are starting to move forward with their 5G rollout. So keep an eye on that space. S&P 500, right, lower high. Came up, tested the 200-day. We've got the 200-day as potential resistance. Aerospace defense had a nice little pop last week, and with these announcements that I saw about North Korea, and we've got some pretty beaten up names in the aerospace sector. Could be worth keeping an eye on some of the names. Now, typically those are big, thick stocks, more swing or long-term hold considerations than they are day trading opportunities. But there could be some names within that space that might be worth dipping a toe in for a little short-term swing into the end of the year. Home builders, a little bit of a bounce. A lot of building material names, which look, all of them have a lot of them have really ugly charts, but they had a nice snapback. We'll see if we get any follow through or continuation of that move and maybe come up and test the 50-day moving average. Maybe we can get back up into the 200-day. But I think the building material space is another one to keep an eye on. Energy did get so energy names have been beaten up pretty badly. I think maybe we get a short-term bounce, like into the end of the year, maybe the next couple of weeks with these Iran sanctions kicking in and whatever. I think energy is worth at least keeping an eye on. Now, oil actually is pulling back. It's going to be tied. These energy names will be tied to oil. One name in particular that I actually wanted to try and get last week. It was on my list. I talked with the pro members about it. WTI. They came out with some good earnings, and it's flirting with the $7 holiday. It was in a perfect spot for an entry, and I didn't take it into earnings. And then I was considering taking it after earnings, and I just didn't get my entry. But I am keeping an eye on that one for potential pullback. I like the earnings and their guidance moving forward, and I think it's worth keeping an eye on. But industrials, a little bit of a pop. But, I mean, we have the same pattern here, right? Lower highs, lower highs. Let's see. Healthcare, lower high, pull back on Friday. Consumer discretionary, lower high. Tried to take out the 200-day, couldn't hold above it. And then retail also had a nice little pop. So, listen, interesting bounces. Actually, I think what I'd really kind of like to see is I'd like to see us consolidate, right? Not necessarily keep ripping higher, just consolidate a little bit, put in a little flag formation, build up some energy, and then see another pop higher. I'd like to see a stair step up, and that would be, I think, healthier than just having us, rip higher for another week or two and then give it all back. I'd like to see a stair step, consolidate. Maybe that's what happens this week as we absorb all this different information that comes out. All right, so that is my take on the overall markets. Let's take a look at this week's stocks to watch list. And I got a little bit of something for everybody here. And by no means are these the only stocks that are on my radar. There was actually quite a bit of good-looking setups out there. But let's see what the market presents us with next week. All right, LOCO. So this thing went LOCO on Friday. Huge pop off of earnings. Took out recent highs. Let me take a look and see what this looks like on a monthly. Now, actually took out a pretty big area of resistance on a weekly time frame, weekly and monthly time frame, right around $14.50, $14.30. Pretty impressive takeout on strong earnings. Now this is a big runner off of when they first did their IPO, and then it just gave it all back. So it broke above the 200-day moving average, took out key area, flat top breakout there at the 450, 460 area. Now what was resistance, maybe you look for that to be support, right? So look for a pullback to this. Maybe we flag out here. Could get a red to green. I don't know what the float is. Unfortunately, TC2000 no longer has the float available on their charts, which is very frustrating, very aggravating. But worth keeping an eye on this for potential red to green move. Just looking back here, it looks like maybe this was the last earnings report. They had about a 2-3 day run. This is the first day of the run. Maybe you look for a red to green, 2-3 day run, short-term swing, possible day trading opportunity in LOCO. CRMD, this is a low price stock, decent volume, 5.5 million shares trading hands on Friday. Had a big, nice, really nice run up into the $2.30 range, pulling back now, testing the 50-day moving average as support. Got a little volume on Friday, got a little bit of a pop. Maybe this gets a red to green type move, short-term swing, day trade type play. In this environment, make sure you're playing size appropriate, right? If you play these types of names. ERII. So this one, this is a big runner a while ago. I mean, this is a big runner a while back. It can be a pop and flopper, but this thing had a pretty big move up into the $15 range. What was that, back in 2016? So these guys reported earnings on last week and had a really impressive reversal candle. Now, the only thing I have a little bit of issue with is that it's the fourth day of the move on this thing. But this had pretty good volume, 1.3 million shares traded hands on Friday, closed right at an area of potential price resistance. Maybe look for this to pull back into the 875 area, 850 area, see if that holds as support for a bounce. But pretty interesting reversal candle there on Friday. This could be a little short-term trading opportunity, day trade, possibly. EXEL, big pop on Friday. Let's see, was this off of earnings? Yes, this was off of earnings. Gapped up, held above the 50-day. If you get a gap fill down to 1549, maybe this drifts down over the next week and you fill that gap to 1549, could be an interesting spot to take it for a bounce trade. And then it could be a red to green day trading opportunity, right? Pull back into the 1690 area, see if that holds a support for a bounce. But looking for maybe more out of EXEL. Take out this trend line and get a 20 or a 200-day moving average test up around $21, right? So could be a short-term swing on EXEL. ACRX got an approval, controversial approval of their drug that's more powerful than morphine. Big volume on Friday. But what really got my attention on Friday was Ladenburg coming out with a $100 price target on this thing. They reiterated their $100 price target. That's kind of aggressive. That's kind of stepping out of the box, right? It's in an interesting spot. Looking for looking for a test of 5. Take it out with some conviction. Could be a day trading opportunity. Let's see. Back this out to the weekly time frame. Take out 5. I think potentially we get up into the 570 area. Just a quick. I'm just looking for a quick hit in this thing. I wouldn't be holding it, looking for that $100 in the next, couple of weeks. I mean, could it happen? I don't know. Maybe. It does have an interesting looking daily, but red to green type move would be a consideration. Pull back down to the 425, $4 area. May look to take it for a little bounce play there. AFMD, this had a nice little pop on Friday, testing the 50-day. Now this is the second day of the move, so it is coming up into potential resistance. Maybe a red to green, and we get a 5 test on this one. Maybe look for a pullback to say 380, 390, and then go up and take out that 50-day, and then go up and test maybe the $5 holla. AFMD, worth at least having on the radar for a potential trading opportunity. HLIT, nice flat top breakout. And here's, one of those communication equipment stocks that I'm talking about, right? So this had an interesting reversal candle the other day, right? I mean, flushed some people out, closed the gap, and then nice big pop yesterday on some pretty good volume. So looking for this to maybe pull back into the 575 area, 550 area, and hold as support. 560 area and hold as support. What was acting as resistance, see if that holds as support for a bounce. Let's see. Not sure when these guys report earnings. So that is something to take into consideration, but definitely worth keeping an eye on HLIT. Make sure you check the float on that one. But this is a big area that it's trying to take out here on the weekly time frame. So keep an eye on HLIT for potential continuation. CYOU, one of the pro members pointed this one out on Friday. I did find it kind of interesting. Looks like it was they report earnings on the 5th of November, so Monday. Right up into area of potential price resistance. Maybe you get a red to green and pull back to 14 or so, and pretty decent volume on Friday. Right, maybe we get a pop, we take out the $15 holla, looking for a 15 test and roll. There is a big gap to fill on the daily, and before you even attempt to fill that gap, you got the 200-day right around $20. That'd be a pretty nice move if it were to go to 20. Hold on a second. So, worth keeping an eye on this CYOU. For a little day trading opportunity. Now, here's a very interesting one. FlexPay or Flex Shopper. This is kind of interesting. Insiders have bought roughly 700,000 shares in September and October from between 78 cents and $1. They did an offering back in September priced at $1, 10 million shares. Their holiday season generates about 40% of their annual business for the year. So, they got the holiday season coming up. It's been kind of basing. They report Friday or Monday before the open. I could be looking to jump into this one in pre-market ahead of their earnings, just as a little lotto play, jumping in with these insiders. It's a pretty significant amount of shares and it wasn't just one guy. It was several different individuals that participated in the insider buying. It's had some pretty interesting volume spikes recently. If they report a good number, I could see this thing getting a little wacky. So worth at least keeping an eye on this one for a short-term trading opportunity, high risk swing. Definitely one that you would want to play size appropriate. INSM. I think this one has got some insider buying too. What was it that got my attention on this? Actually reported decent earnings a few days ago. This one is just so for me. Right. It looks like it may have found some support here at the $14 area. It is up a few days in a row. It is coming up into an area of potential price resistance. I'm looking for it to maybe hit $18. It's worth having on the radar. Like I said, I probably would be more interested on this one on a pullback to say 15.30 or so. Maybe take it for a little bounce play there. That's just, like I said, that's just so-so. I'm just so-so on that one. ATRS had this kind of pegged last week and was looking at trying to get involved in this thing. $3 actually turns out to be the place where it would have been a pretty good entry. But now I'm watching it here at the 50-day moving average. Maybe we consolidate here and build out a little flag formation. These guys report earnings on the 6th. So, maybe after earnings we get a pop, we go up and test that $4 holler. Maybe we take the $4 holler out. This is a competitor to the EpiPen. They've got a generic EpiPen and there was some kind of news related item to EpiPens on Friday. Maybe this gets some benefit from that. Worth keeping an eye on this one for a day trading opportunity, maybe even a swing consideration if they report great earnings. ENDV. So I have a little bit of something for everybody, right? This is for you true penny players out there. You know, I'll play a penny stock. You know, little lottery ticket, and this one has got a pretty interesting setup on the daily time frame. And the CEO has been a consistent buyer of this thing from 2 cents up to 8 cents, right? And it's sitting here at 4 cents. You know, pull back to 2 cents. I might be inclined to jump in this thing just for a little lotto play. It trades actually pretty decent volume, 1.2 million shares traded hands on Friday. I think it's kind of interesting. I think, you know, it's at least worth having on the radar, right? Just for a pure speculation, penny stock, lotto play. You got a golden cross. You got the 50-day, which is, you know, crossed above the 200-day. It did just pierce below, but, you know, 3 cents down to 2 cents, I might dip my toe in this thing just for fun. PBI, big thick stock, been around for a while. Pitney Bowes, I didn't even know they were in business anymore. They reported a great earnings number last week and had a nice big pop. You know, I think you consider this one more for a swing. It got up into this area of price resistance and is pulling back. Maybe what it does is it consolidates here in this area. I think, you know, on a pullback to 750, 740 down to the 50-day, you just flag out and kind of drift lower to that area. Could be an interesting spot to take this. Could be looking at a longer-term trend reversal on this PBI. Great guidance, good earnings. I think it's worth keeping an eye on this one for a potential swing play in PBI. I like the look of it. LTHM, one of the members brought this one up, and I told them that I was going to take full credit for it and put it on the list this week. They actually have their quiet period ending this week. So you're likely going to see analysts either come out with upgrades or downgrades, price targets on LTHM. I think lithium plays are kind of interesting and worth keeping an eye on. This one could be taking out its all-time highs if it gets some real good upgrades, right? So we'll have to see what happens. I mean, it is the third day of the move, so we'll see how this plays out. But LTHM is probably worth keeping an eye on. If it pulls back, if it pulls back and tests in the $14.50 area, $14 area, get a little double bottom test, that could be an interesting spot to take it for a swing. And if it breaks out over 17, could be an interesting spot to take it for a day trade. ADMP, it's another this is another generic EpiPen play, right? So this could get a little bit of action as well. Looking for maybe a little trend line break. Not sure when these guys report earnings. Got to make sure you check that out. But maybe you get a 3 test and roll. Get a test up into the 350 area, right around the 200-day. ATEN just reported pretty good earnings. Little double bottom here, right? Finding some resistance there at the 50-day. I kind of like this one on a pullback into the $5.89, $6 area. See if that holds the support. Could be a swing. Could be a swing play. I don't like the fact that the 50-day crossed below the 200-day. That's a little, they got the death cross there. I'm not crazy about that. But worth keeping an eye on ATEN. Could be an interesting swing play. I wouldn't go overly aggressive in it, but it's worth keeping an eye on a pullback, like I said, into the 570, 550, 560 area. maybe take it for a little bounce for a short-term swing there after a good earnings report. NEPT, there's a couple of cannabis names that I like. This is one of them. I've played it a couple of times when it's gotten down into the $3 area. I was actually looking to try and get it in again if it got down to $3. And it got down to the 200-day and then bounced, right? So not sure when these guys have earnings, but I like this name, especially if it gets down closer to the $2.75 to $3 area. I could look to jump in that one for a swing. But if it takes out that trend line and takes out the $4 holla, it could get a pop back up into the $5 range, and that'd be a nice little quick hit. So worth keeping an eye on NEPT. There's a few names actually that I like in the cannabis space. It's been beaten up pretty well in the last few weeks since Canada went legal, and I think some of the names have been overdone. CVSI is another one that I'm kind of keeping an eye on. I don't know if I have that on this week's list or not. I don't think I do. CVSI is another one that I'm paying attention to, and ACB and CGC. A lot of the names in the space I think are worth having on your radar. VSTM. So this is these guys got approval. And this pulled back. Fairly significant pullback here, back below the 200-day moving average, but near an area of potential price support right around this $4.50. It's overbought, or it's oversold. MACD looks like it's kind of trying to curl up. I think this is in a very interesting spot. I believe there was some insider buying in this one, and I think it's worth keeping an eye on this for a potential bounce in this area, somewhere around 450, and then reclaim. Get a test back up to the 200-day, maybe reclaim it, get up into the 650, 675 area. Worth keeping an eye on VSTM for a bounce play. Could be a higher risk swing type play. ENZ, this has had some insider buying. You go back to now these guys have some challenges. I did read over their last earnings call. Got about 35,000 shares that were bought by 3 insiders from 335 to 352. Now that's not a lot of shares, but they're starting to dip their toe. And if you go back on the monthly time frame on this and take a look, we're at an area of potential price support, right? I mean, we could be getting into that area where we find a little support. Their earnings were actually were decent the last quarter. This thing's been on a pretty steady decline, and it's at an interesting spot for a potential bounce. I think it's worth keeping on the radar. Could be worth taking just maybe a little dip of the toe. I mean, could it go down to $2? Absolutely. $2.25, $2, you bet. It could happen. So, but I think it's getting to an area where you could find some support for a bounce. So, worth keeping an eye on ENZ, and watch that insider activity as well. INSG, another communications equipment. These guys report this week. Full disclosure. So I laid out a trade plan for this one last week. I didn't get my entry for my trade plan, but I did take a little itty bitty piece in INSG heading into the earnings. I still have my limit buy from my trade plan in there for additional shares if I were to get it. If these guys report a decent earnings number, we could see a nice little pop here. Maybe take out the $4 holla. If they miss, you could easily see it pull back into the 235 area and test the 200-day. Maybe even get down to 235, 225 area. There's some potential price support there. I would be looking to add to this name for a long-term hold consideration. So I like INSG. I like the look of the daily. Did start to break out a little bit, but then pulled back on Friday. We'll have to see what earnings present for it next week, but pretty nice look there on INSG. PXLW reported earnings. Looks like it was a great earnings report. Look at the reversal candle on this one, right? Pulled back to 390, closed in the upper portion of the candle. Did not close green on the day, but did close up in the upper portion of the candle right below the 50-day. Looking for this to maybe be a red to green. Could be a swing. This one can be a pop and flopper, so keep that in mind. But pull back to 420 or so, 410. Could be an interesting spot to take this for a little bounce. Had some volume too on this reversal. I kind of like the look of the daily on it. Like I said, there was a pretty good earnings report, and then you have a couple of directors that bought 20,000 shares at $4.33. So $4.33, 427. That's where we're at, right? So you've got some insider buying in this area. I think it's worth keeping an eye on for a day trade or even possibly a short-term swing. Ruby, this is on last week's watch list, and it remains on my list. Insider buying, 342, sitting right here in that area. I like the look of Ruby quite a bit. More for a swing. I haven't taken it yet. But if it pulls back into the 325, 320 area, I'm likely going to dip my toe, and I would be comfortable holding it into earnings. Gas, GASS. So, a lot of the shippers had some action last week. Worth keeping an eye on these shippers because they can get a little wacky. Now, this one pulled back on Friday. Actually, several of them did, but worth at least keeping an eye on it, right? Interesting looking setup. Maybe you pull back into the 325 area, you try to catch it for a little bounce. And that's it. That's all I've got for stocks to watch this week. It's going to be an interesting week. There's going to be plenty of other opportunities in some names that are going to report earnings. Like I said, I've got my eye on quite a few. We'll see how it plays out. We'll see how this week plays out. Just keep in mind that, yes, it was nice to have a bounce, but it's not an all clear. It's not an all clear. We still have some work to do. All right? All right. Have a fantastic weekend. Enjoy the rest of it, and I will see you all in the near future. Good luck trading out there.